impossible start.
The problem was that we were too fast in the cut with this soft damper, so the car jump out very fast.
It was a hard crash for Petra Prokop too, who, as well as being Martin's sister, also has the daunting task of being his team manager.
Being a manager and sister at one moment is quite difficult. It's first you always think like a sister, because to lose a brother for sure it's not. It's a terrible imagination, and so first you always think like sister, and then when this gets over, then you start to think as a manager and organize things and work on it.
It was very fast. In the TV it's not so fast, and in the real it was in very high speed, and we were rolling I don't know how many times, but yeah, it was quite okay for us. We lost a very good race, but we were happy that we had no injuries, and yeah, but it was quite hard crash for me.
I don't know if he actually learned from that. They're just crazy. They all time push maximum, and I think yeah, it takes time till they forget it. I mean, maybe one rally it's still in them, but then they forget and they just go blind again.
It's back to the big boys for our top three and some big crashes. At number 3, we go to a place not for the faint-hearted, Rally Deutschland. In the past, this event has thrown up all sorts of crashes, from the comedic to the frightening. But the place that everybody remembers the most is the Baumholder military range, a place where they test tanks.
Germany is always a very tricky in the military area, especially when it's wet.
The so-called Hinkelsteins, the tank traps, the big concrete blocks put into the road. I think they go about 3 meters down and 1 meter up. They just don't move if a tank hits them. So when a rally car hits them, it's just a mess.
It's always very dirty, and we have had massive accidents also there because of these stones that are beside the road, which are waiting when you go off.
Some concrete on the side of the road, which can be dangerous when you hit it. I think at the start it's for the tank, and but we have no tank. We have some rally cars, so for sure when you drive at 200 kilometers in the middle of these kind of things, it's sometimes a bit dangerous.
As you may have gathered, these concrete blocks don't move, as Peter Solberg found out on the first ever running of the event back in 2002.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 6. Right bus open, 16.
But that was small fry compared to his accident in 2004, number 3 in our top 10 spectacular crashes.
Things happen very quickly, and the crash in Germany that year, it's had understeer over crash, hit the concrete, rolled many times over on the right side, and then we're thrown over to the left side of the road, and I turned around and the roof was completely smashed down. I saw Phil, and I had a bad thought straight away.
Probably the single biggest impact that any driver has survived. I mean, Phil was very lucky, double impact on his side. Very lucky to get away.
Then I ran up to the start line. I saw Duval come. I tried to stop him, but he was doing his own thing in his head, you know. Up to the start line, and then the doctor was there. I said, get the helicopter, stop the race, get the ambulance straight down. And he said, okay, calm down. Sorry? And you know, because they didn't want to react to it, what I said, you know, calm down, you know, let you... Calm, you know, sorry. I'm calm, I said, you know. And I took the doctor like this, up and down the car. You just stop the race straight away. You get that ambulance now. I was bleeding from my tongue, you know. And then I did it, you know.
This accident really shows just how strong these cars are. Just imagine hitting a totally immobile concrete block at 120 kilometers an hour. Peter and Phil were very lucky.
That would be something I certainly wouldn't want to go through again. It was a very violent accident and rolling over some concrete blocks, the Hinkelsteins in Germany, and each time we impacted on the roof we hit a Hinkelstein, and I think that has got to be one of the most horrible moments of my life, actually.
This crash was also incredible because the car was completely destroyed and they had nothing, they were not injured because they hit concrete, which was incredible. The speed was not very high, but if the speed could have been a little bit higher, I think it can be a disaster for them also.
When I went to the hospital after, when he was laying there, he was so happy because I got some tablets, you know. Ooh, you know. So he was very happy. Are you ready? Yeah, no problem. You know.
Despite suffering a 27G impact on a solid concrete Hinkelstein, veteran Phil amazingly went on to win the next 3 events and was a close runner-up in the championship.
Have the Germany NBA back on top again.
Absolutely.
This is it then, we're down to the top 2 crashes as voted by rally fans. And in the runner-up spot, like Petter's in Germany, it's a crash that stunned drivers and teams alike for its violence and destruction. The driver is Marco Martin, a man famous for his flat-out mentality that regularly produced memorable moments.
Some drivers they like to jump a long way, they take jumps flat. Other drivers, they don't jump very much at all. For instance, Marcus Grunholm, you'd think because Marcus was flamboyant and everything, but he didn't like to have the car in the air. So of course then different drivers, Marco Martin always used to, if there's a chance of it being flat, then he would take it. He didn't care how far he flew, or we've got some fantastic pictures of him in Argentina the year before. I've genuinely never seen a car as high.
But the one time this mentality let him down was Argentina in 2004. It was the first day and Marco and his co-driver, the late Michael Park, were in second spot, chasing Peter Solberg, who was leading at the time. After recent poor results, they needed a decent finish to keep their title challenge alive, but in stage 5, all hopes came to a swift and brutal end. This is our number 2.
On this instance, there was a big lump of bedrock, and of course when he landed after the jump, the suspension went on to full compression, but of course the bedrock hit the main steel diff guard and fuel tank guard, which basically just launched the car. I think, you know, okay, it was a huge accident, a great deal of damage, but again, the roll cage and everything stood up to, you know, it did its job.
I've never seen an accident like it. There was just, all that was left was the shell of the car, and that was just totally destroyed. The cockpit was the only thing that was intact, really, and that was the only thing that had saved them. And we looked for Marco, and we couldn't find him, and he was in the field. He was sat in the field, so I got some famous shots of him rubbing his head and showing me his helmet, where all the paint had come off his helmet, where he did hit his helmet on the roll cage. But yeah, that was just so scary.
Incredibly, both Marco and his co-driver Michael Park were uninjured. Marco, though, was taken to hospital for checks, leaving a dazed co-driver to try and explain what went wrong.
I have absolutely no idea what's happened. We were coming flat out up this hill and there was a small jump here, but it's kicked the back end of the car up unbelievably, and we've landed on the roof and gone end over end, and I don't know where I am at the minute.
Basically they got the note wrong. There was nothing that they actually did wrong other than they'd marked it in their notes wrong, that they'd marked it as a flat crest. They just thought, you know, that they would get a bit of air and land the other side and carry on. So, and I think just before takeoff they realised that, you know, they shouldn't be in 6th gear and flat. They should probably be, you know, in 4th or something like that. And it, you know, it just flipped.
Let's have a look at what caused the crash in a bit more detail. Compare Marco's onboards on the right with Sebastian Loeb's on the left. You can see the bit of bedrock sticking out. The focus lands on it and the rear of the car is catapulted into the air. Compare this to Loeb, who had the rock in his notes. He stays left, missing the offending object and passes safely. The onboards only capture some of the story, but what they do show is the incredible speed the car was travelling in the build-up to the crash.
If it comes to a sudden stop, then the consequences would have been a lot worse. But the fact that it did roll, obviously violently, fortunately it didn't result in any major injury for the crews.
It's now a section of Argentine stage that every driver is wary of.
I think it's written in everybody's pace notes. I mean, certainly our guys were reminded of it this year because it was used the same direction this year as when Marco had his accident.
I remember the place. It was I know exactly what happened, but and now I think the road is better, and now it's flat. But I never take it flat because I think to that. So yeah, what I remember is that it was a very impressive crash.
But the most impressive is still to come. Remember, that is only number 2, but what is number 1? Join us for the mother of all crashes coming up after the break. Welcome back to Top 10 Spectacular Crashes, where we've already counted down an impressive top 9. But before we get to that final ultimate number 1 spectacular crash, here are a few that we here at WRC TV are surprised didn't make it in. A lot of drivers voted for this one. It's 1991, it's Australia, and it's a biggie.
The joy of that accident is that both Lewis and Carlos came out unscathed. Of course, the car just rolled down the road. It never actually really hit anything, although it was bouncing fairly severely on the road at the time. Shaken but not stirred, I think is the expression. Stirred and shaken, I have no idea. It was a big accident.
And the other amazing thing about this barrel roll is that Carlos had already crashed that day.
From the helicopter you see that he's coming too fast on the right-hand corner, rolls, only lose 20 seconds back to road, but later in the States, in the spectator area here, he cuts too much and then makes a massive roll.
It was very spectacular, and as soon as the car stopped, the first thing, of course, that we asked to each other, Carlos asked me, Luis, are you okay? Yeah. And he said, Luis, do you think we can continue? And I said, Carlos, no, I think not anymore. I mean, the car was in pieces, as you've seen.
It seems to be quite common with drivers that the instinct to continue overrides the fact that the car is in bits. Marcus Gronholm was in a similar state of denial after this accident in GB 2002. Again, another crash that escaped our top 10.
We were maybe not paying enough attention to our driving, and instead we were laughing in the car in the middle of the corners, and then, okay, we all know what happened. And then I knocked Marcus, hey, start the engine, you go. And he tried to go with the first gear, and then somebody knocked the window that you are missing 3 wheels, don't continue.
Sebastian Loeb may have broken every record in the book, but he rarely breaks cars. His best attempt was this in Australia in 2005. But he left the next emission from our top 10 list till 2009, and in all fairness, after our online vote had finished. So for those that think Sebastian Loeb's Greek smash was spectacular, here it is in all its fan cam glory. But this one will go down, we think, as the biggest crash of 2009. It took 19.8 seconds. The car did a full 12 rolls down 200 metres of Portuguese mountain, and it's been viewed by over 500,000 people on the web.
When I'm small and I was interested in rallying, I wanted to see crashy. But when I'm older and I'm trying myself, I know how you feel when you make the crash, so it's not always necessarily so nice to watch those crashes.
Famous last words. Ironically, that interview was done just 24 hours before Jari-Matti Latvala had what would become the biggest crash of his career.
It is definitely the biggest and the hardest what I have ever had. I didn't realize until we started the roll, and it's a nightmare feeling when you are in the car. You just wait, it's just crashing, and the noise when everything is just ripping off with the car, and roll cages are coming closer and closer to you. You just hope that it's gonna stop, but it is the feeling that I want nobody to feel it. It is a nightmare.
So before we get to the ultimate crash as voted by fans around the world, just a little reminder of the 9 that came before. At number 10, Guy Wilkes and the Spanish Tree. At number 9, Colin McRae and the Corsican Ravine. At number 8, Andreas Mikkelsen and the Welsh hay bale. At number 7, Colin McRae again on the edge in Wales. At number 6, Francois Delacour and the Australian Trees. At number 5, Florian Nagel and the advertising banner.